So hello and welcome. I'm Frederick Dunn and this is The Way to Be. We've got a problem going on outside, July the 2nd of 2026. I have a swarm that should not have swarmed, and I'm going to pull all the tricks out of my bag here and see if I can't get some control, starting with Swarm Commander. Now these little capsules are kind of cool. I'm not going to use it. I'm just showing it to you. These are supposed to be good for about 2 years. I've had them much longer than that. In fact, I'm going to take this little piece of paper towel here that's held in a roll by a piece of tape, and I'm going to use the Swarm Commander spray. I'm going to spritz it on either end, and I'm going to do my best to make the best out of a bad situation. And I'm going to explain what the bad situation here is pretty darn quick. So I'm going to spritz this, put it in a Ziploc baggie. These are those big freezer bags that I use all the time. Holds a gallon. Look at my problem. This is the Way to Be Academy, by the way. Look at the tree in the background. See the height of that tree? And what's in it? A swarm of bees. Now, you've probably heard the phrase, swarm in July. Just let them fly. But you know what? Look at the size of this thing. And what's worse is, this swarm of honeybees came from my grandson's hive, so I have to get them back for him. So here's a frame with drawn comb. I'm using this really long telescoping pole. How long is it? You're probably wondering. Well, it's 30 feet if you do it at max extension. Someone asked about this recently, and I have to say I can't even find it anymore online. This worm is too high for a ladder, too high for any sensible approach, really, other than to get my trash can, put it on the end of this pole, and extend it up here and gather these bees. Now, it's a hot day. I don't have to tell you. Heat is just blowing across the northeastern United States, and this is in the state of Pennsylvania, specifically the northwestern part of the state of Pennsylvania. We should be out of our primary swarm season, at least for spring. We're going to have swarm season again at the end of the year. So along around late August, early September, when the next big nectar flow kicks in, we'll be dealing with it again. But my grandson, who's 10, he has plans for the honey from his primary beehive. It happens to be a flow hive. And because he needs the honey out of that flow hive, which is in the background there, this is just showing how I set up the basket. For those who want to make one of their own, 1¼ inch PVC pipe, expanded metal square basket, beneficial by the way, and some drawn comb, which I hope to lure these bees onto. Should be very easy. But you know, because his colony swarmed, and it's not the first time they've done that, by the way, he's at a loss because we had extra room for them. They were filling out their flow supers. By the way, we're starting to see the end cells filling up. Everything is going fantastic. He was already counting his honey before he harvested it. And this is a lot of bees to leave a single colony at any time of year, let alone the second day of July. So I'm here by myself. You can hear everything in the background. I'm using a tripod, of course. And I'm going to do my best. If I can't save this entire swarm, at least maybe I can steal some away from it. And you may be wondering, how do you do that? Well, remember I spritzed that piece of paper towel with the Swarm Commander. And that should send out a Nasinoff scent. It is a synthetic Nasinoff. This isn't just lemongrass oil and stuff like that. And I just want to see if I can, if there's any chance, get the queen off of the center column of that tree, because that's the other thing. You know, if they were out on the end of a branch, like a reasonable swarm would be, I could just bump them from underneath and they drop into my basket, and I bring them down, I put a queen excluder on top of it, and I would have those bees, because all I have to do, remember, is get control of the queen. And those bees are active. I don't like that either. Now I do see that they're walking down onto the frame of drawn comb, which is pretty nice. I didn't spritz it with sugar syrup or anything like that. The only lure in this basket is the Swarm Commander that's on that paper towel. But a lot of the bees are coming down on there, but that is not impressive. Because I have a problem, and this is something when you're looking at a swarm on a tree branch or on a tree, and in this case, almost 30 feet up, they're doing waggle dances. I don't like that. So that'd be different if they were all searching all over the place for a queen, because some beekeeper, like yours truly, used some kind of pheromone and lured the queen out of the swarm and into a basket. That would be a perfect world if I could do that. To date, there is no queen lure specifically. We can imitate a queen if we want to. We can use some TempQueen. But all we're trying to do is act like, with a synthetic Nasinoff, we want to act like other bees, telling these bees that the basket is a better place to be than the center column of this tree. Best for you, best for me, and best for my grandson. I'm glad he's not here to make his comments about how he thinks things should be done. He would probably be rigging a tall ladder up there. Now we have a bee vac with a really long extension on it, but it also requires that I get about 12 feet up a ladder and then use the extension. And that would work. But, you know, the wind has been kicking up and stopping, and it is 91 degrees Fahrenheit outside. It's a hot day. I'm kind of taking the easy route, easy way out, so to speak. This is not going to move quickly. I'm trying to introduce you to my methods. So, what you should know about me is that I take my time. I'm never in a hurry. When it comes to swarms, I like to just, sit around, stare at them, listen to the birds, drink some cappuccino, even on a hot day. That's right, I do that. This is early in the morning, by the way. This is right about 10 a.m. So again, I don't like the activity on the surface. You'll notice there are some bees waggle dancing up there. It gets serious when they all start doing the same waggle dance on all sides of the swarm. So I repositioned the basket a little bit. All it did was bother them. I want them to go in the basket, not stay with the center of the tree. And it's not working. So, part of beekeeping, let's just talk about that, is figuring out how to manipulate your bees. Remember, these are not a native species. These are non-native. They are used for pollination services. They are used by sideliners and backyard beekeepers to produce beeswax so you can make things out of it, get some honey. We are in a strong nectar flow right now, which is one of the reasons why this particular colony swarmed. And it was, if I had to pick a colony that I would be okay with swarming, this is not the one. It wouldn't even make the list. Because I'm trying to help my grandson make the most and have the best beekeeping experience he possibly can. He's been out here following me around since he was 2 years old, by the way, so he's into it. He'll be coming today, by the way, and later on, because he wants to check up on things. So what do you see? Well, the good news is, because the pole is so long, I can brace it against the tree and just leave it there. That's a huge advantage. If I had to stand there and hold that thing, instead of sitting down, looking through the camera, sipping a drink, and just seeing what the bees are going to do, this would be hard on you. So there's a lot of advantage to getting the longest pole you can get a hold of, because nobody ever said, well, my pole is just too long for that job. No, it's only the short poles, the window washer poles and things like that don't measure up. So I'm looking at this from a few different angles, and the bees are appearing to move all over the frame. But there's a conflict. Even though I've put a synthetic Nasinoff in there, the bees in the main cluster are also fanning their Nasinoff glands, and they are in a stronger position to lure their nest mates here. Now, one thing I want you to notice too, while we're looking at this swarm on this tree, even with the basket up there, Look at the bees that are hovering around the tree. A lot of bees are coming and going. What I'd like you to know about honeybees is that when there's swarm activity, when there's all that nazzing off in the air and bees are on the move, a lot of the bees that join up with this cluster are not from this colony of bees. They're foragers that just happen to be flying around, flying by. They smell the pheromone, they smell the nazzing off, and there's a queen. Let's say they're in a colony that has an unmated queen, not a very strong pheromone there when it comes to the queen mandibular pheromone competition. So if they fly through the pheromone stream of a mated queen that has a lot of attraction like this one does, they might just join up. So you can see a small cluster of bees on a tree somewhere, and as you watch it over an extended period of time, and I highly recommend that you do, I mean, what else do you have to do? Let's be honest. You don't really have anywhere to be. Just sit out there and watch your bees at length. See what they do. Just fool around. It's this late in swarm season. This is time to play around with them and see what you can get them to do. Make the best out of the worst situation, maybe. So watching the swarm collection and watching them grow in numbers, this is pretty darn interesting. There's something called bee drift. There's a chicken that's proud of the egg she just laid. She wants to let us know. Golden lace Wyandotte, by the way. You can't see her, but she's off behind me there. So anyway, bees will go with pheromones. We can use these pheromones to manipulate them ourselves. And so right now we're just trying the synthetic nazzing off, and it is not working. This is not an advertisement for the Blythewood Bee Company, by the way. I paid for that myself. So there's nothing here being promoted other than to tell you that we have the tools to do the job. So look at that. Once again, you can leave it up there, and I'm going to pull it away. Now what I'd like to see, this is a good thing to point out too, when I pull it away from that central swarm cluster, and you can see it's even bigger now than it was, if the bees are flying from the cluster to the basket, very good chance I have the queen on board. But on the flip side of that, if they're leaving my basket and flying back to the branch or the central column of that tree, then I don't have the queen. So it's a failure. Is it though? Do we really ever fail, or do we just learn a new way that didn't work? I'm all about it. I think you should experiment at every opportunity just to see what the bees will do, and then as the years pass and as you manage or attempt to manage colony after colony, swarm after swarm, year after year, month after month, you should develop a consensus of things that work. You should improve your percentage of success. So we're all impressed by bees. I mean, look at that. It looks cool. You want to see something unimpressive? Look at this. And if you want to shake them off a frame, vibrate the frame. Like that. And they'll all fall off. You don't have to give it a rapid, single, sudden shake. Just agitate them off of there. And this doesn't look good. Why do we put the queen excluder on top? Well, they call it a queen includer in this case, but it's just in the miracle potential that I got the queen in there. Clearly did not. Most of them left. Now we're going to up our game. That's right. What's in here? See that little light green noodle? That is queen mandibular pheromone. It's synthetic. It's called TempQueen. So what do you think I'm going to do now? Well, with pheromone alone, I'm going to compete, or hope to, compete with the queen that is in that colony on that tree. Now I put it in that cage. I could have just dropped the noodle in there by itself, but later I have to find it and remove it. I'm going to explain why. Because here's my goal. I don't think I'm going to get that swarm off of that tree. I'm just not. They're too bonded to that queen, which tells me that she's likely mated. She has a lot of bees, very popular. But look at the response I got from the bees in the basket. They go right after that pheromone. So now what I'm trying to do is divide the force. If I can't collect the whole swarm, what can I do? Well, I can lure a bunch of these foragers away and these swarm members from the colony. I could get them to think that my queen pheromone in that basket, though she's synthetic and non-existent, pheromones alone will lure a large percentage of these bees off this tree and into my basket. I'm writing these off. Let's be honest. I don't have any way to find the queen in that cluster and get her off of this tree. So my best case scenario here is I can lure away some of the workers. Now I'm also looking at the waggle dances they're doing, by the way, and I notice they're waggling and heading. It looks like they're going to head to the south based on their waggle angle compared to the current sun position. So I think they're headed to another apiary that I know about who must have swarm traps out. So my goal here is to make sure the swarm that departs is as small as possible. So I'm going to lure a bunch of these bees into my basket. And again, you are seeing a fraction of the time that this took, by the way, because I spend way too much time trying out different things, moving the trash can around to different angles, trying to block the returning scouts, by the way, and get the bees inside to fly into my basket. And it's working. We can see a bunch of bees going down there. And as you saw when I put the queen mandibular pheromone, the TempQueen, in that roller inside the basket, they went to that straight away. Now once they start clustering around that, those are my bees again. And we're going to manipulate those even further. You're going to see what I'm going to do, because the goal is to save some of the workforce. Since we know the hive that they departed from, then I also know that I can collect bees from this swarm into my trash can. And then when the time is right, I'll take the trash can down with as many bees in it as I feel like I can get. And then I will ultimately put them against the hive that they all departed from, and they will walk in on their own. What do you think the odds are? It's kind of a cool picture, to be honest. I like that. I don't know what my neighbors think when they see a big pole going into a tree. But I'm very happy today, by the way, that I don't hear gunshots going off or ATVs or side-by-sides. And I think it's too hot for those people, but it's not too hot for a beekeeper to harvest some bees. Now I'm doing the same thing again. So I've got a bunch of bees in my basket. Some of them are fanning, and I see this cluster of bees on the side of the basket towards the tree. If the queen were on my basket, and it's happened in the past, it just isn't happening right now, I've had the bees leave the tree and all of them go onto the basket. Now that's something, as a collector of swarms, you need to be prepared for, because they can add a lot of weight to that basket on the end of your pole. So when you're selecting a pole for this purpose, make sure it's the strongest one you can find that you can also manage to elevate and control. But the stronger angle you have, the more weight that goes in the basket, the more potential you have to lose control of it. And for example, I can't let my grandson do this. He'll arc it over, and once it starts to lean away from him, he can't hold it anymore. So I don't see what I need them to do. Clearly, I didn't get the queen there, holding fast to the tree. They're in no hurry to go anywhere. And if that were a softball-sized cluster of bees out at the end of a branch, for example, that would be super easy to just bump them right off of it. But I'm just pulling this one down. The bees are upset because I bumped them a little bit with the basket and then pulled it all down. And you can see the bees going from the right and flying back to the tree. Now here's the thing. I have some faithful bees now that are following a synthetic. So now I'm away from the pheromone of the real queen on the tree, and I have this basket on the ground, So any bees that are flying around this area that are from that swarm, they're scouting around or even returning, will be coming to this basket now. So I can pick up even more of them. And look at how unsettled they are up there. Now I know that they're unstable because they're actually getting ready to fly away. We can see that they're waggle dancing and that multiple waggle dances are going on at once. How does this differ from a swarm on a tree that's lost its queen? If they lost their queen, which they clearly did not, but if they did, you would see the bees that are on the tree. They'd start walking down the branches, up and down the central column of the tree, and they would be searching for the queen. They're not doing that. So I'm here with the bees that I've collected that I'm just going to use to fortify the numbers of bees in my grandson's hive. So I'm trying to return as many of those bees to the hive as I possibly can, but in order for that to be successful, I have to wait until the swarm leaves. That's right. I have to wait for that swarm in the tree to actually depart before I can install these back in the hive. Otherwise, they'll just go and rejoin the swarm up in the tree. So just to refresh you, what's keeping them in this basket? The queen mandibular pheromone. So we zoom in and take a look at what's left up in the tree. Those numbers look a little smaller to me. So I'm not totally unhappy. I think I got a bunch of bees here. But it's also pretty clear that the queen is up there. And the flash mob is something you don't want to see. If you're trying to get ready to collect some bees off a tree and they start activating like this and looking like they're going to fly, if they're in reach, you can squirt them with cold fresh water. Now on a day like today when it's in the 90s, that's not going to slow them down for very long, but it will ground a swarm while you get your gear together. So I highly recommend having cold fresh water handy, and I would use it on these in a minute if they were low enough for me to reach them. But spraying them high in a tree like that doesn't do anything for me because I can't access them to collect them. So they're about to go. See the flash mob? Flash mob is they're all doing the same dance all over the swarm in every direction. And so we're just going to sit tight and watch them go. I want you to see how quickly things can turn, and we want them to leave. Let's be straight about that. And they're leaving. Watch how quickly they completely depart from this tree. Okay, so what just happened there? That entire departure from that tree from start to finish was less than a minute. So if you were walking away and doing something else or getting your gear together to go and collect a swarm, you could come back in just a minute and find an empty tree. Now here's the advantage. I'm not going to go and install these on my grandson's hive right away, because I'm going to leave them out here at the base of that tree that the swarm just departed from. There are a couple of reasons for that. One, I can still collect random bees that are in the area. The other thing is, when you consider how many bees were in that swarm, a lot of scouts and foragers were out and about, and they're coming back to a tree that is now empty. So they're going to scour the area first, look to find out if there's a queen pheromone nearby that they can join up with, which is why my basket's here. And if they can't find any of that, and the swarm is gone, where would they go? They'll go to his colony again anyway, or if they happen to be drifters from other colonies, they'll just find their way to another colony and they'll join up. So there wouldn't be any orphans up there. As soon as they come back, they scour the branches, look around, can't find the queen, can't find the swarm, which headed off to the southwest. And so the ones that show up now will join my basket of bees. Why did I put a queen excluder on there, by the way? Well, just in case there was a secondary queen in there or something, I want to be able to see her, because otherwise I really don't need it. I'm using, what is the magnet? What's holding them there? The QMP noodle, of course. So I could pull the queen excluder off and they should stay, but if there were a queen in there with it, they could leave. So we need to pay attention to all the behavior here. They're not fanning their Nasonov glands, you know, in big numbers. You see one or two, but they're not overly enthusiastic. We have a lot of bees joining up here, and if you've noticed too, look at the daylight right now. We're at the end of the day. That's right. The span of these sequences has been several hours. So, and of course, I tucked that little paper towel there, which still smells like Nasonov. And bees don't land on it, but it does help them orient towards this trash can, and then when they get close, they're sniffing around for a queen. So what are we looking at here? My grandson's hive. Now these bees, this is business as usual. For example, if we had departed, if we were gone somewhere when that swarm happened, you come back, this looks like a normal hive. Doesn't look like anything happened. You would never guess that there was a swarm. And then I brought my basket over here, lean it against it, and they're all going in right away. Now I should mention, I forgot to show you, that I took the roller out with the PMP noodle in it, and I put that inside a Ziploc baggie and inside the Way to Be Academy building. So now there are no competing pheromones, and this is a familiar hive for them. Familiar scent, except for those that are drifting in, of course, that join later. They're all just following each other into this hive, and there's something we should think about. We're making the best of a worst case scenario. We would have lost all of these worker bees if I didn't come out, put a basket on a pole, and try to harvest these away from that main swarm. So I want them to come back, go back to work. What's going on inside this hive? Well, since they swarmed, there are replacement queens coming out. One of them will be selected by the colony most often. And one queen will prevail. And over the next few days here, she will have to, of course, mature sexually. It takes about 9 days on average, although I've seen this happen much quicker. So in the space of 2 weeks, I should be able to inspect this colony and find a laying queen. If 2 weeks' time passes and I don't see that happening, then I need to do something to replace the queen in this colony. So for now, just if we think about the numbers of bees here. So these are bees that would have been gone. I'm sure you've seen the little posters and stuff that say, you know, one forager honeybee produces an 1/11th of a teaspoon of honey. Another one will say a 1/12th of a teaspoon of honey. Well, for example, 11 of these bees would produce an entire teaspoon. So if we look at the several thousand bees that are in this basket, we are restoring honey production to this colony. What else is going on? Well, I'm going to give you some close-ups of these bees. And as we look at them up close, we can see, look at their abdomens. They're full. Their honey crops are full. Because what do they do before they leave the hive when they're swarming? They fill up. They actually rob their own hive. You know, that puts a dent in the open nectar and honey that's being dried down in a hive, because that's what they consume first. They all fill up their honey crops, and away they go to start a new colony. Well, thanks to me, my grandson owes me a debt here. Because not only am I returning a valuable workforce of honeybees, they are bringing back the honey that they took. And guess what a lot of them are going to do? They're going to pass that on, and they're going to restore it to the honey cells inside the hive. That's right. Unless another queen comes out and swarms and we end up with a tertiary swarm or an after swarm and off they go again, we can only control what we can control. So we do the best we can. If it doesn't work out, then you learn something. But in this case, I didn't get the swarm, but I rerouted a bunch of their workers. And I think that's a win. Plus, I was able to share with you some methods to help manipulate your bees and make the most of a bad situation. Get some of them back. Especially now we're going into July. Do your best to cycle them back. They can surprise you, as you've obviously seen now. You can think everything's great, we're all settled, we're just going to get nectar now, we've got honey supers on, everything is supposed to be being stored. But there are the outliers like these right here that decided to send their queen on her way. Also, I'm noticing the entrance here, which on flow hive entrances, it's 3/8 of an inch high across the width of the landing board. And I do have some little inserted pieces of wood there. So after this is all done, after they're settled, I'm going to pull those out. I'm going to leave this entrance wider just to see if it makes much of a difference. But they were drawing down their honey just fine on their own. We have very high humidity right now, which works against the bees. And when we look around at the other hives in the apiary, there is bearding on every hive. The hives are wearing their bees, which is very common in this heat, this humidity, and with the influx of nectar. We have milkweed, we have clover, we have lots of resources that the bees are getting nectar from. And raspberries are still going strong. So this is a strong nectar flow where I am. Where you are, things might be different. You could be facing a dearth. And once a dearth hits, you don't really have to worry that much about swarming, because they don't do it when times are lean. They do it when there's plenty of resources coming in from the environment. Some people may wonder, how far do they fly to get these resources? Well, textbook, up to 3 miles, some cases more. But your bees aren't going to fly any further than they need to find the resources that the colony has a demand for. So right now, with all the heat, it's in the 90s, they need water more than anything else. So we have lots of fresh water around. The bees are, you can hear our pond, which is to the east of this apiary. And the bees are all over the bank. They love getting water from algae areas, sand. They get it there. There's a drone, bottom right there. So there are some drones here. Now that's another indicator we'll be watching for in the near future. When the new queen matures and flies out for her mating flights, you may see a drone rush on the beehive. And that means there's a bunch of drones following the queen back to the hive. And that would indicate that she comes back mated. So here we are, wrapping up the day, and the sun is setting at the way to be. So, I think my grandson's in good shape. I'm glad that we were able to restore these bees. And I hope that you are going to have a fantastic weekend, and maybe we'll get the wheels turning here on more tools for you to use to harvest the swarm. And if you can't collect the swarm itself, at least get some of the workers back in the hive they came from. I'm Frederick Dunn. This has been The Way to Bee, and I want to thank you for watching.